You walk into a quiet room beneath a building that does not officially exist. The hallway outside had no signs, no directory, no receptionist, just a locked door and a camera that followed you as you approached. Inside, 6 people are already seated at a long black table. No one introduces themselves. A single folder sits in front of you. Inside is a contract with almost no information. No organization name. No job title. Just a line at the bottom. Your signature. If you sign it, your life enters a system most people only hear about in rumors. If you hesitate, the door opens and you walk back into the world you came from. No one pressures you. No one explains anything. The room is silent, but the people watching you are not here by accident. You don't understand what this moment really means yet, but you will. Level 1. You enter through a building that looks like a private research foundation. Glass walls, quiet offices, neutral lighting. Employees walk past you carrying tablets and folders. To anyone outside, this place looks like a policy institute. Inside, you are escorted down 2 levels below the main floor. A conference room waits. On the table are documents describing something called the network. No one uses the word Illuminati here. Not officially. Instead, they describe a structure, layers of influence, long-term coordination, quiet cooperation between people in powerful positions. At this level, your role is simple: observation. You attend meetings. You listen. You learn how information flows through the system. Access is limited. You do not make decisions. You do not influence outcomes. You are simply learning the architecture. The constraint here is silence. Everything discussed in these rooms never leaves them. Phones are surrendered before entry. Notes are collected when the meeting ends. From the outside, this place looks like a think tank. Inside, the conversations are different. But the real pressure hasn't started yet. Level 2. You are invited into smaller meetings now. The room is darker. Fewer people. The topics are more specific. Economic forecasts, political shifts, leadership transitions in major institutions. You notice something unusual. The people in the room rarely debate facts. Instead, they discuss timing. When a change should happen. When a crisis should stabilize. When a public narrative should shift direction. Reports are referenced. Analysts present projections, but the tone is calm, almost procedural. At this level, your responsibility changes. You carry information between groups. You deliver briefings. You connect people who are not supposed to appear connected. From the outside, nothing looks unusual. Emails are vague. Meetings are informal, but the network grows clearer, and you start to see the pattern. This system doesn't control the world directly. It nudges it, quietly. But something about that pattern will matter later. Level 3. You arrive at a private estate outside the city. Tall gates, security cameras, a long driveway disappearing into trees. Inside the house, a meeting is already underway. Executives, policy advisors, a retired general, a technology founder. The network is larger than you thought. Here you are introduced to the first real rule of the system. Influence must never appear coordinated. The system does not issue orders. Instead, it aligns incentives. If multiple people want the same outcome for different reasons, the system encourages the alignment. Your role now becomes facilitation. You identify where interests overlap. You recommend introductions. You arrange meetings that appear accidental. This level requires something new: discretion under pressure. You begin noticing gaps in information. Decisions are made without full explanations. Some outcomes appear inevitable. Others disappear without discussion. From the outside, these events look random. Inside the room, they rarely are. But the structure above you remains hidden. For now. Level 4. The room is underground again, but this time it looks older. Wood-paneled walls, heavy doors, no windows, only 8 chairs. You recognize half the faces. The others are people whose names appear in headlines. At this level, you are no longer observing the system. You are helping stabilize it. Economic disruptions, political instability, leadership crises inside powerful institutions. These situations arrive on the table as briefings. Your responsibility is coordination, not control. Coordination. You relay signals between sectors, finance, policy, media, technology. The goal is not domination. The goal is continuity. The system existed before anyone in this room arrived, and it must continue after they leave. That is the real objective. But this is where something unusual happens. You begin to notice that some decisions are not explained even to people at this table. And that means there are levels above this one. Level 5. You arrive late at night. The building is almost empty. A single security guard nods as you pass. Inside a small office, a secure terminal waits. You receive reports compiled from dozens of sources. Global markets, political movements, institutional instability. The system is constantly monitoring pressure points. But at this level, your role changes again. You now recommend actions, subtle ones, delaying announcements, advancing leadership changes, supporting certain negotiations, discouraging others. These suggestions move quietly through networks of influence. Sometimes they work, sometimes they fail, but the pressure increases. Because every recommendation creates consequences, and those consequences ripple outward. From the outside, these shifts look like normal political evolution. Inside the system, they are monitored carefully, because the system cannot appear responsible. Ever. Level 6. You are invited to a meeting with people you have never seen before. No names are used. No introductions. The room contains only a long table and a wall of screens displaying live data. Markets. Political polling. Global communications traffic. At this level, the system is not reacting. It is anticipating. The conversations focus on patterns, cycles that repeat across decades. Instability that emerges in predictable waves. This is something people inside large institutions eventually notice. History rarely moves randomly. It moves in rhythms. And the system studies those rhythms constantly. Your responsibility is now strategic analysis. You propose long-term stabilizing moves. Not next month. Not next year. 10 years. 20 years. Decisions here move slowly, but their effects last generations. And this is where the psychological pressure becomes real, because influence at this scale feels invisible, and responsibility feels enormous. But there is still another level above you. Level 7. The location changes again. A private aircraft hangar. Inside, a small meeting room surrounded by soundproof glass. Only 5 chairs. At this level, the system is no longer discussing events. It is discussing narratives, public perception, collective belief. Because institutions do not survive on power alone. They survive on legitimacy. The conversation becomes philosophical. How much stability does a society require? How much disruption can it absorb? When does reform become necessary? When does it become dangerous? You realize something important here. The system does not see itself as controlling the world. It sees itself as managing instability. From the outside, critics call this manipulation. Inside the room, they call it risk management. But this is where the pattern breaks. Because even this level receives instructions from somewhere else. Level 8. You enter a building with no signage, no windows, no public record of ownership. Inside is a circular room. No screens, no notes. Just people. Older, quiet, Patient. This level rarely speaks. They ask questions instead. What happens if this system disappears? What happens if institutions collapse? What happens if no one coordinates anything? These discussions rarely produce immediate decisions. They produce direction, small adjustments that ripple down through every level below. This is the hidden truth that was introduced at the beginning. The system is not controlled by one group. It is maintained by a chain of responsibility. Each level stabilizes the one below it, and every person inside believes they are preventing something worse. But the real pressure here is something else. Legacy. Because the system must survive people. And eventually, you begin to understand what that means. Level 9. You return to the first building where you started. The glass walls. The quiet offices. The research foundation that officially studies economic policy. In the lobby, a new person is waiting. They look nervous, curious. A folder sits in front of them. A contract with almost no information. No organization name. No job title. Just a signature line. You watch from across the room. You recognize the moment immediately. The same moment you experienced. They don't understand what this decision means yet, but they will. Because systems like this do not depend on individuals. People enter, people leave, but the structure continues. You were never the system. You were part of it. And one day, someone else will take your seat at the table. They will see the same rooms, the same meetings, the same quiet decisions. They will think they are witnessing something unique, but the system has seen this pattern before, and it will see it again. If you were sitting in that chair, looking at that contract, what decision would you make? Subscribe if you want to step inside another system